Good morning. Today is Wednesday, January 20th, and it is a Green Cohort Day. All students, faculty, and staff, don't forget to order your lunch today for next week. Please do so by clicking on the link on your advisory page in Canvas. The link will close tomorrow morning at 8:45. Students, anyone who did not have their photo taken for the yearbook are asked to stop by Fuller Hall today or tomorrow between 8:30 and 3 o'clock to have your photo taken. The fashion program is seeking models of all body types and gender expressions for this year's fashion show. Please stop by Morse 201. Sign-ups will continue today, Wednesday, 1:20 for the Green Cohort. If you were signed up as a model last year, we'd love to have you back. Keep an eye on your email. If you have any questions or couldn't sign up yesterday, please email Ms. Chiro at emma.chiro@stjlabs.com. Scope will hold an online meeting today at 3:10 on Zoom. Please use the link Mrs. Morris sent to you. If you're interested in learning about or joining Scope, we always welcome new members and ideas. Hope to see you there. Thursday's Skins with the Outing Club will start tomorrow at 3:15 on Brantview Drive. Skinning, or alpine touring, is the act of climbing up a mountain and skiing down it. Mr. Bentley will be taking a small bus to Burke each Thursday this winter to skin the mountain. In order to participate, you will need to have your own equipment, including a helmet and a backpack, an adequate headlamp, and a signed permission form if you are a day student. Come and see Mr. Bentley in Ranger 209 for sign-ups, questions, and permission forms, or email at james.bentley@stjlabs.com. Space is limited to 6 students, and some loaner gear may be available. Our first skin will meet at Brantview Drive tomorrow at 3:15. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. via Zoom, the Academy is hosting constitutional scholar Natalia Torres Zuniga. Dr. Torres, who is Peruvian, will join us from her home in Norway and will give a presentation about how the constitutions of Peru and Chile are threatened by corruption and neoliberalism. If you're interested in Latin America or in government and law, this presentation will deepen your understandings of culture and governance, and it will also likely help you better understand the crises currently facing the United States. Please see or email Mr. Arain at garain@stjacademy.org so that he can give you the Zoom link. Parents and community members are also free to attend. Attention past, present, and future AP seminar students. Remember Spoon? Yes, Jeremy Spoon, the author of Tourism, Persistence, and Change. He will share lessons learned and recommendations from research on rural and indigenous disaster recoveries in Nepal and the relevance of these findings to the Pacific Northwest/Cascadia region. He is giving this talk on Zoom tomorrow at 3 o'clock. Anyone is welcome to attend, not just the seminar students who have studied Spoon's work. Email Ms. Drew at angela.drew@stjlabs.com for information on how to register. Happy birthday today to Anna Robertson, Elizabeth Mastroianni Douglas, and Catherine Mastroianni Douglas. Have a great day.
Good morning, St. Johnsbury Academy, and happy Inauguration Day. This morning, we have a special speaker and a return performance by 2 of our Poetry Out Loud contestants, so we may run over just a bit, but it will be worth it. As you should all know, today at noon, there will be sworn in a new American president and vice president, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and after that, they will begin their service immediately. We're fortunate to have Mr. Eaton here to talk about the inauguration, but I wanted first to mention to you all what happened last night in Washington, D.C., which should be humming with activity before the great ceremony that's happening today, but which is instead emptied of people, cross-hatched with flags and rows of lights and lined with National Guard, one of whom is Uriah Cochran, one of our custodial staff whose birthday was yesterday and who deployed to Washington last Friday. At sundown in Washington, D.C. last night, our new president and vice president stood at one end of the reflecting pool that stretches between the Washington Monument and the Lincoln Memorial. They each spoke very briefly to acknowledge the fact that yesterday we reached the point of having lost more than 400,000 American lives to COVID-19. 2 singers, one an ICU nurse, sang briefly and beautifully. And then all of them turned to the reflecting pool and watched as the 400 lights that lined the pool on both sides, each standing for 1,000 lives, were illuminated. As they stood there, the darkness deepened and the lights glowed brighter and brighter against the water. My family and I wept. It was the first ritual acknowledgement of the collective grief of our nation since this pandemic began. It was a humble vigil and simple illumination and modest voices singing clearly, and it gave us permission to grieve and to honor the dead. The nurse who sang Amazing Grace let us think about all of the people who have died separated from their families. The woman who sang Hallelujah allowed us to say out loud how cold and broken the world has felt in the past year. And then they allowed us to bless that and praise that. And it was a somber moment, but it was also full of hope. It's the job of leaders to help us understand what we're experiencing and to tell us the truth about it so that we can confront it together with sanity and with common purpose. To do that, they have to care enough to try to understand what others might be going through, and they have to think about what might provide us solace. There is great comfort in hearing our stories being told truthfully and in good faith, and there was great comfort in pausing to begin making sense of our common story as one nation, indivisible. Today's inauguration is one other such ritual. And here to discuss that with you is our interim academic dean and capstone chair, Mr. Eaton. Please join me in welcoming him.
Good morning, everybody. Happy Hump Day Wednesday. Shout out to my advisory. We usually do the camel from Geico for Hump Day. So think of that when you're thinking of Hump Day. It is Inauguration Day, and what is true about democracy in a republic is that it's messy. And so last evening, as Dr. Howell spoke, we were solemn and sorrowful and thought of loss. And today, it seems strange to be celebratory. We inaugurate a new president. I'm from the History and Social Science Department, and I teach U.S. history, AP government, and AP economics. And I can't help but be excited on a day like today. It's like the Olympics for me. Every 4 years this happens. So as a historian and a political scientist, we have lessons that we like to learn about from data. And we learn to recognize patterns in data and to look at the past for those patterns in terms of informing our actions today. So I looked far back. Inauguration comes from the ancient Roman Republic. It was a practice of Roman priests divining the auspices of a new leader. If you watch the ceremony today, you will notice that our Capitol has a direct architectural reflection to that Roman Republic, and that is purposeful. But the authors of the Constitution would like to think we've evolved not just the Roman system, but our society. And so the idea of inauguration has moved beyond looking for auspices to the installation of a new president. When I was thinking about lessons of history, I looked at the last 100 years in terms of what is most like our decade. And I thought immediately of the 1960s, perhaps the most divided decade in the last century. And there are two inaugurations. And interestingly, in one of the most divided decades in American history, they also happen to be the two closest popular vote elections in US history. In 1960, John Kennedy defeated Richard Nixon by 17/100%. That's pretty close. 112,000 votes out of over 34 million cast. And in that election, the context was in 1957, Russia had launched Sputnik, and the United States was quite nervous. We were feeling like we were falling behind in the Cold War. During the election year, a U-2 spy plane was shot down over Russia, and the administration said, no, we don't even have such a plane. Russia produced not only pictures of the plane, but also Commander Powers, who was convicted of spying. The American people were shaken and were beginning to doubt what was going on in Washington. And that's a little context for the election. So when Kennedy was inaugurated, he spoke to the American people and said, quote, "So let us begin anew, remembering on both sides that civility is not a sign of weakness, and sincerity is always subject to proof. Let us never negotiate out of fear, but let us never fear to negotiate. Let both sides explore what problems unite us, instead of belaboring those problems which divide us." And then, in perhaps his most famous statement, he noted, "And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country." In these words, Kennedy was echoing many famous presidential inaugurals where the president has asked the people to sacrifice a little of their own comfort for the common good. 8 years later, 1968, which was perhaps our most divisive and troubled year in our history in terms of the 20th and 21st centuries, John F. Kennedy, his brother, Robert, was running for the Democratic nomination for the presidency. As you heard on Monday, Dr. King was assassinated in April. There were 168 riots in cities around the United States. In June, just after winning the California primary, Robert Kennedy was assassinated. So the leading candidate for the Democratic nomination was gone. The country was literally up in arms. Richard Nixon won that election by the second smallest popular vote in the last century. He defeated his opponent by less than 1%. Nixon, following the example set years earlier, exclaimed the following: "To a crisis of spirit, we need an answer of spirit. To find that answer, we need only look within ourselves. When we listen, quote, to the better angels of our nature, end quote, we find that they celebrate the simple things, the basic things, such as goodness, decency, love, and kindness. Greatness comes in simple trappings. The simple things are the ones most needed today. If we are to surmount what divides us and cement what unites us." These presidents were reflecting the challenge that the Constitution gives us every day. It is, after all, our fundamental law. It implores us in its first line to form a more perfect union. We as a community this week have been invited to take up the cause of being part of something greater than ourselves by participating in the 54-mile challenge that Mr. Fox spoke of yesterday. And so I entreat you to partake in this opportunity to sacrifice some of your own time and comfort to make our community better. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Eaton. Our next attraction today is two returning contestants in the Poetry Out Loud competition. Ms. Drew mentioned this when she introduced them last time. It is a contest that we've been participating in for years. And we have 4 contestants, 2 of whom will go today and 2 tomorrow. And I just wanted to mention on this inauguration day that today there's an inaugural poet, and her name is Amanda Gorman. She's an African-American young woman who's 22 years old. So if you do get a chance to watch today, which I would encourage, please look out for her and for the place of poetry in our national life, which still is very strong. So first I want to invite our contestant Gavin Ghafouri, who will be reciting George Meredith's poem, Dirge in Woods. That should be on. Is that on? Yes. Excellent. All right.
Dirge in Woods by George Meredith. A wind sways the pines, and below, not a breath of wild air. Still, as the mosses that glow on the flooring and over the roots, over the lines of the roots, here and there. The pine tree drops its dead. They are quiet, as under the sea. Overhead rushes life in a race. As the clouds chase, and we go. And we drop like the fruits of the tree. Even we. Even so. Thank you.
Thank you, Gavin. Now I'd like to invite Lily Barth to the stage to recite, I have the name of the poem right here, Fairy Tale with Laryngitis and Resignation Letter by Johanna Dubrow. Lily?
Fairy Tale with Laryngitis and Resignation Letter by Jean Dubrow. You remember the mermaid makes a deal? Her tongue evicted from her throat, and moving is a knife cut with every step. This is what escape from water means. Dear colleagues, you write. For weeks, I've been typing this letter in the bright kingdom of my imagination. Your body is a ship of pain. Pleasure is when you climb the rocks and watch the moonlight touching everywhere you want to go. A silver world called Far Away. Dear colleagues, you write. This place is a few sentences contained by the cursor's rippling barrier. What happened here is only beaks and brackets, the serif's liquid stroke. The old story has witches. A prince in love with the surging silence of women, a knife that turns the water red. You write, dear colleagues, now these years are filed in the infinite oceans of bureaucracy. Everything bleaches or fades. In other words, goodbye. Sometimes it's possible to walk. although you've been told inside the oyster shell of your heart there is no soul. Creatures like you must end as a spray of salt, green droplets floating breathless in the air. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for participating today. And faculty, I would say, if you did want to watch that inauguration today, you have my blessing to do so. Please have an excellent day, everybody.